Hello, everyone. It's been a long time since I've been on here, so I imagine there probably won't be very many people seeing this live. But the reason why I'm doing it live is because I am too too lazy to ultimately it's because I'm just too lazy to actually edit a video right now. So, but today's topic is actually going to contain why we should study personality, even though there are things way beyond it. The little element it plays in the overall personal development of a person and their life and those elements within. So first off, I'm going to cover a few topics. I'm going to talk about a little bit of what we're going to discuss. Ultimately, it's going to be the formation of a personality, kind of how it transitions through the early years, and then how to manage it current years and kind of what the implications are of that personality. All right. So when we come to actually developing a personality, what I want to clarify is that it is the way that we interact with the world. It is the unique manifestation of our social conditioning. It is how we actually get to a point where society, our parents, guidance, whatever, has led us to believe that we feel a certain way, or whatever way we feel is manifested as a result of that conditioning, some genetic factors, and then obviously when we're a little bit younger and those things take place. The holding environment is obviously fundamental to this. I apologize, I'm a little drowsy right now, but the concept behind it is ultimately this formation of this personality, which we tend to identify, and I'm going to go into detail about that in just a second here. Okay, so I'm also checking some things I handwrote earlier this week. So I certainly want you guys to know that I'm looking down because I'm referring to some of the notes that the subject is. The subject's really personal to me because it actually correlates with a lot of things that I've gone through in the recent years here. So um, the roots of personality is kind of our anchor into this world of what the real the world of social world, right? We're conditioned as kids to feel and believe and act a certain way, regardless. Or I'm sorry, not regardless. The values in which our culture instills in us, American culture or whatever country you're from, there's a different culture and there's certain things that are considered polite or impolite or that type of thing. So when we're developing the personality, we're going to pick up some of that and discard the other aspects of it. It also is going to leave some wounds. The idea of the wounds being there is going to create a little bit of a hole in this personality so that you can return to divinity. Okay, so um, what I mean by that is that, well, we'll get into that. I'll dive into that aspect. But so we have this concept of what we are as a baby. We don't really know who we are. The ego doesn't begin to form. We're still kind of blended with everything. Um, there's literally little to no separation at that point. So the ego doesn't begin to form until we're a little older. All right. So we have this aspect of what we condition ourselves to start feeling and believing, right? At a very early age. Oh, I need this particular bottle, or I need this particular person, or I need this thing. And it becomes things that we begin to attach to, right? And our ego really is our focus of conscious attention. That's all it is. It's a tool we use to focus, right? That's what it's supposedly for. So it's one thing you don't want to destroy. It's just to become stop being disillusioned thinking that it is you. So what's the difference between the ego and your personality? Well, the personality is not really what or who you are. It is the manifestation of you trying to replace a divine aspect. And I've talked about this in some of my Enneagram videos, but I've been a little rusty on Enneagram for a while now. Haven't really covered a lot of that like I wanted to due to special life events that have obviously you can see I've moved and there's a lot of other stuff going on. So those life events have altered a lot of the course of this channel. So that being said, I do want to let you guys know that the ego is something that is necessary. It's not something you want to defeat, but you want to ultimately understand its role. It's a tool to be used for you guys to focus conscious attention, and for all of us to focus our conscious attention on something, right? Whether it's understanding or whether it's using our minds as a tool or whatever it may be. So that ego is that angle. It's what we're focusing on. The personality is a way that we manifest and almost duplicate the divine through our own individuation, which essentially implies that as we think, what is our personality, right? I'm this outgoing person, or I'm this social person, or I love to talk to people, or I love these particular aspects of life. I love to do art or something. This is like, you think this is your personality. And what it is not that all these things are bad. It's just that there is a unique way that you were formed. I this earlier. I think it's relevant to what I'm speaking with. But here's my hand, right? And what you see here is a thumb. It sounds really basic, but you're going to get the idea in just a second. This thumb is designed for very specific things, right? It's designed to do specific things. The problem is that, let's say the thumb was designed to do this motion right here. Let's just say it's going to flex, right? We create this personality to try to duplicate that. So we kind of like, okay, I'm going to do this instead, or I'm going to do the action of what my shoulder should be doing, right? Something ridiculous that we think that we should be duplicating. But the idea is that we're duplicating the purpose. So if you're actually this finger, right? And I'm going to get into the bigger picture here in a second. But if you're actually this finger and you're trying to duplicate the action of the thumb, instead of doing what the finger's purpose is. So how do you get down to the unique purpose of it? All right. So the idea behind it is that you really get into the understanding that there's very specific purposes for your divinity. And when I say divinity, you can take any religion you want and understand that this is the natural flow of the universe, whether it's God, whether it's any other set of gods, or whether it's completely cosmic, or whether it's evolution. It doesn't matter. A natural flow, the order of things. And when you say that this is the purpose of this particular item, what we're doing is we have to understand what our purpose is, what our direction is. And that comes from letting go of the attachment, and then allowing everything to flow through us. I don't believe that effort is what is necessary to do that. Effort is not something, I think effort is symbolic of resistance. When you actually allow things to flow through you, it starts working in a very smooth way. And yeah, of course, you're going to be able to use your aspects pretty well. You're gonna have struggles. You're gonna have those things. Those things are natural, but allowing it to flow naturally through you instead of putting up resistance. So, the subconscious desire to restore the holding environment is where the ego is really, really profound. So some people are attached to business and success, for example. And if you really start digging deep and you start finding out why they're attached to these things, is it money? Is it power? Is it fame? What you find out is it's usually going to be tied to something lacking in the holding environment. And by holding environment, I mean the environment you were when you were a kid or a child. I mean, very young infant, baby, whatever. Maybe you were missing something. And this is where Enneagram ties in as well, figuring out what that aspect is. All right. So, for example, you may have 3s or 6s or 8s all emulating their holding environment in a very specific way. And that's what it is. It's an attempt to duplicate and to restore the holding environment in a natural order. However, because it's being manifested through our consciousness instead of, it's being consciously manifested through our attempt to make it right. We're always going to be in an endless pattern of self-defeat and continually let down, because what we're realizing is we are trying to make something divine that is not. It is coming from a tool. It cannot be greater than itself. And that's the aspect we're really digging in here. So when it comes to that, it'll always be a less than perfect imitation. Okay? So the idea is that you can set a paradox for yourself, because then you start questioning, okay, how do I actually detach from something without being attached to the detachment in itself, right? Well, you're not actually attempting to detach from it. You're creating an awareness simply because you're looking at what it is. You're not making judgments. You're just aware of what's working, what is flowing through you. You become aware of these things. You don't actually try. You don't try to become you don't try to become or emulate or surrender or kill in your ego. You don't try anything. You just become aware. You watch things work as they are, like the silent witness who just sees everything happening as it is, whether you wake up and decide to kill 1,000,000 people, or you wake up and decide to eat breakfast. It's all the same, as far as from the viewpoint of that. So if your standard angle is that you're going to get rid of the ego, you're setting a whole new layer of that. Or if you're setting a standard that you're working towards something, you're still setting a whole new layer of expectation and loss, expectation and failure, expectation and maybe a success, and then another failure. It's an endless loop. And this is where it gets really tricky, because you're setting a paradox for yourself. So the idea behind it is that you actually stick to one thing, and that one thing is awareness. All right. So anxiety associated with this, or in general, is our own interpretation of the past and expectations of the future, instead of observing what's happening right now and just simply being aware of it. And when you return to the present moment, and you let go of your egoic desire to attain something, rather you just let it go and you return to this very moment, which you identify is nothing, just the natural flow. You can become very silent, and you see how things flow around you, and all of a sudden this thick barrier between you and the rest of humanity and the rest of existence becomes more and more thin. Next thing you know is you realize how in this moment there is trillions of things happening. Trillions, quadrillions, quintillions, whatever's after that. There's so many things, every little chemical process down to the very cellular core of who you are, all the way to the expansion of the entire universe. There are simultaneous events happening at every second, every millisecond. In this present moment, how many things have just happened all over the world, all over the universe? How many chemical reactions? The idea behind it is that you see that power is here where we are today. And when you become aware of what's going on inside of you, you start appreciating these things in the very moment. It's not about fighting something. It's not about putting up resistance, not about hating aspects of yourself. So when you watch your mind hijack your body, or your emotions hijack your body, or your baby mama decided to have 16 boyfriends while the time you took a trip to Tahiti, you'll find out that ultimately you can see this happening right before you. And then you can just start chuckling, because what you realize is that it's so small compared to everything else, and it's just one small thing. So the idea behind that is really just identifying how to be aware of what is happening around you at any given time. So if you can discern a thought from an awareness, which are two different things. A lot of people may confound what awareness is with thoughts. Well, there's a point where if you're practicing this, whether you're walking, standing, running, or eating chicken, there's a point where you can recognize that you're actually aware of your thinking, and then you may actually create a thought that you're aware of your thinking. So you may become aware. It may hit you like, whoa, I'm actually thinking, but no words. You can just feel it. It's an awareness. Then all of a sudden a thought pops up and goes, wow, I'm actually thinking. That thought is a whole new layer. The more you can recognize how much this repeats in your head, the more you recognize that it's not actually you. You're the one doing the watching. The real you, the I that stands behind the individual personality that's been formed based on social construct, right? So if you take somebody that may have had parents who were born in a different country, and then you bring them here to America and they're raised American, then they may adopt American cultural values, and that may become part of their personality. Could you say it was genetic? Probably not, because it was social conditioning. But there might be some genetic factors, absolutely. But the idea behind it is, does that holding environment form the personality? And if so, who were you before the personality was formed? Who were you? Right? If you think about this, who are you before the personality is formed? Because as you get older, and what you recognize is, oh, I know who I am. Okay, how old are you? 24. Okay, you know who you are. Is that going to be like that forever? Are you going to be 50 and still that way, or are you not? How do you know? Because when you were 2, you didn't know that you were going to be the way you are now. And when you were 2, you had no cognizance of what was actually happening. You were still forming a core personality. To assume that who you are right now as your core personality is ludicrous, in my opinion. And it's because you understand nothing about where you're going to be. You understand nothing about how you're going to get over certain things. Maybe your personality is you have social phobia, right? And you're scared of people. And maybe that's your personality, right? So you go look up MBTI or Enneagram or whatever it is and figure out that you are introverted because you don't like people. What if you find out that's a past wound and you actually somehow miraculously overcame it? Are you changing personality type? All of a sudden, are you a new personality type because you're like, oh my God, I'm a whole new person. Who am I? Right? So you can't actually know what your personality is because it's ever changing. What are you? Because you could say the same when you were 2. If your personality was static, which it's not, if you thought your personality was static, then I guess you just never change. You just stay the same your whole life. So the idea behind it is, when we get to a point where we recognize that at no static moment we are this personality, but actually we're the universal constant. If we watch this cosmic dance of the way that things unfold before us, we start coming to a point where we realize that it's grander than what we thought we are. It's grander than the social constructs. So if you understand what I'm saying, or even understand a quarter of what I'm saying, because half of what I'm saying sounds like gibberish to me too, but if you actually understand a quarter of what I'm saying, then you'll probably wonder why the heck learn personality type. This is what the whole point of this video is. Why should you study personality type? And that's where we'll go down that road here in a second. So to recap, for people who may have just joined this particular conversation, or for people who have hopped in a little later, to recap kind of what we've covered so far is the effect of our holding environment, our genetics, and our social development that has constructed a personality. But the question is, if you hypothetically were the exact same conditions, genetics and everything, and you were born in 4 different places, right, in 4 different multi-dimensional universes, even though this is hypothetical, would you be the same person? If not, then you got to start thinking about what were you, regardless of what your environment has created, right? What were you? What are you? Who are you, right? Well, beyond that, once you can figure out who you are, it's the amazing static constant of what we're dealing with and what we see as I. All right, because at some point when you say the word I, you start seeing that it's not referring to this individual personality, it's referring to something itself, at least everything, an extension. So when you go back to the thumb in the hand example, right, the thumb is an extension of the hand, which is an extension of my arm, which is an extension of my shoulder, extension of my body. It's all the same, right? It's all the same. And when you start understanding that you and your best friend may be 2 fingers on the same hand, are you? Yes, you may be different fingers, but you're part of the same thing. So now the question is, why do you study personality? Because personality, this is why you want to study personality. There is a big misconduct on our part from let's say the Americas, and let's say Europe specifically, maybe a little Northern Asia, of this idea that the mind is the answer to all things. And I was looking at this book the other day, and it was James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, which was kind of one of the original books of You Are Your Thoughts, right? You are what you think, or, I think, therefore I am, and all this extra stuff. But at some point you realize, okay, if the mind is this idea of who I am, then I might as well study the mind forever. That's not the case, in my opinion. Many will disagree. That's fine. The idea behind it is that if you associate yourself with the mind, you're missing the big picture. You're associating yourself with your focus, conscious, that conscious of focused attention, that you're your focus of attention is that's what you're associating it with. So am I focusing on the fact that I want to be successful? Now I'm identifying with the I want to be successful, then that's who I've associated with. And some of you who are watching this video, you may have realized while studying personality type that sometime during your life you may have seen more INFJ-ish, and then another time you see more INFP-ish, and another time you may see more ENTJ-ish. And you're like, oh, I don't know what I am. There's periods of my life where I'm like this, and there's periods of life where I'm like this. And you're not really sure. You might be confused, so you might be like, you might be very confused about where you're at. And you're like, you know what? I don't have a personality type. I'm an enigma. I don't fit in 16 categories. I'm the 17. And don't worry, I will find my type. One way or another, I will find it. And you go mad on the computer with your little fingers, and it's like 6 a.m, and your eyes are bloodshot, and you're still looking at personality type, and you're tripping out on acid, trying to figure out who you are. But the idea behind it is that you still haven't figured out what your personality type is, because you've vacillated with so many different things, because your mind is selecting things, right? So you say, I focus on being successful. So you're like, I'm driven for success. I must be ENTJ. Then the next time you're like, screw success. I think I'm going to go to the hills and smoke doobie and chill. And now I guess I'm an INFP today, right? So that's kind of where those attachments are formed. And then you start getting attached to this. And the biggest part of what I've seen with this personality type is people actually identify with the personality type. So your ego selects that I am ENTJ, and the next thing you know, your actions start duplicating. Your actions actually start duplicating that personality type based on the descriptions you read. So you can actually meet people who've read 16personalities.com, and you don't know they've read that yet, but when they start acting, you're like, wow, you're like a living depiction of that profile. It's pretty amazing that you can duplicate that so well, right? And you're like, that's me at a T, and then you start emulating it like it's a reason to be, right? That's what makes me laugh. Trust me, I've done it too. I think we've all done it to some extent, one way or another, whether it's you want to be a warrior, you want to be a cookie cutter. It just depends, right? You want to be a baker, and you start duplicating that. And because maybe it's something that you think you need to do. Maybe it's something your parents need to do. Maybe you have some daddy issues, or how do you love me now, Dad? You like me now? I pierced my lip. So maybe, I don't know what it is, but it could be a number of reasons that make you feel a certain way. So the idea behind it is that we attach. And with you being associated with your focus of conscious attention, then you're always going to find new attachments. So when you get to a point where you are more static, then you start realizing, okay, here's the deal. Here's how I'm duplicating. I'm attempting to recreate my holding environment or restore it. Let me put it this way, not recreate, because that's a bad word choice, because that sounds like you're just trying to recreate what happened to you. Instead, you're trying to restore it to make it perfect. It's a replication of who you were before your ego formed, right? It's a replication of that. So when your ego actually forms and you get this idea that, okay, I associate my holding environment with a sense of peace. I'm going to do everything in my life to make everything feel peaceful. Now, this is oversimplification, of course, but the idea behind it is that you are duplicating or trying to replicate a perfect holding environment based on your vantage point of what extension you were. Some people were born the thumb. Some people were born the finger. This is essentially like your Enneagram, right? Here's my 9 different Enneagrams. Oh, I can't count, right? Okay. But you're 9 different Enneagrams, right? So you got 9. And so maybe some of you are the thumbs. One of you is the left thumb. One of you is the right thumb. One of you is the index finger. One of you is the little broken pinky finger. I'm Enneagram 10. Somebody messed up the theory. Help me. Right? So the concept behind it is the same. Is everybody is attached. We're all part of this cosmic dance, but we're different elements of this. This is the vantage point in which you experience reality before your personality was formed. So yeah, so that's the whole point behind it. And when you start understanding that that's your vantage point, you're going to duplicate that vantage point with your own personality. So when you start learning to detach a little bit, you actually see how you're attempting to do that with each attachment. You'll find that some people are never attached to success because they're not trying to duplicate a thing that was not present in their vantage point. They weren't trying to do that. But when that personality forms and it feels like they need to attach with this guy's like, oh, I love success. I'm the biggest finger on the hand. Oh, screw you, thumb. If I could turn, yeah, screw you, thumb. Here. So that's the whole point behind it, is that you have different stances and different vantage points. So this person's trying to duplicate that feeling of success, or they're using success to duplicate some kind of core feeling of the divine, right? So when you get that, you start identifying, okay, how am I recreating this holding pattern? How am I recreating or restoring a holding environment that duplicates divinity? That's where you study personality type. Why am I so attached to success? Why am I so attached to being this charming individual? Why am I so attached to being in this social construct? Why am I so attached to all these different things? And you'll find that some people are so attached to being not attached. That's the crazy part. That's what you'll get with a lot of Enneagram 9s. I'm unattached. I'm a spiritual guru. And they hold their hands like this as they walk through. They pick up their coffee like this. They, they sit like this. And they actually do this all the time. You'll see this all the time. And that's when you know you're an Enneagram 9 because you're doing this. All right. That's the thing. When you start seeing that, you'll start seeing this little piece thing, right? Like they're walking around and they're just doing their little meditation thing. And then when you tell them, oh, wow, you're so spiritual, like, I know. I know. Yeah, that's what you're going to see with those Enneagram 9s. They think they're so enlightened, but they start getting cocky and arrogant about their own spirituality. And so the whole idea behind it is, you know, you'll see these manifestations. There's people attached to being not attached. There's people attached to success. There's people attached to being hippies. There's people attached to being the rebels. There's people attached to all kinds of things. Okay, but why are they doing this? What you'll find out is you can actually start categorizing this according to the Enneagram, 9 different Enneagram types. You can start seeing that. So it's the same thing with psychological perspectives. The mind is only a tool to be understood enough to learn how to escape it. I think it was Osho that made an example of you only study the mind enough. If you were in a prison, you only study the prison enough to get out of it. You don't study the prison every day and you draw blueprints and maps of the prison, eventually forgetting why you're doing this, and you just do it just to do it, right? You actually have forgotten the purpose of it. So when you're studying psychology or the personality type, you need to study it enough to know how to detach from it. And I remember I said this a long time ago, as you develop in your own personal development, your personality type is going to become harder and harder to identify. You'll say, oh, wow, what is my personality type? When it becomes harder and harder to identify, it is because you're starting to come closer to your core, right? And so that's the idea behind it, is that, no, you're not going to become a universal, I'm all personality types. You'll always have that core psychological perspective. But the way it's being manifested will start changing once you become aware of what's happening. And the real you will just kind of sit back and sit front row there and kind of watch the mind game happen in front of you. Front row seats to the dance, right? So when you become aware, you fill whatever role you have to fill, but it's not who you are. Some people are overly attached to being a father. Some people are over attached to being a mother. Some people are over attached to being a child or a little tit sucker or whatever it is that they are attached to, right? Some people are attached to whatever it may be. Some people are attached to being badass. Some people are attached to being tough. Some people are attached to being pseudo masculine. Whatever the case is, that attachment is it's not who you really are. It's just what you're manifesting. And once you identify that, you realize, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I attaching this? But you can only be aware before you can start asking yourself that. But the personality type will always be there. When you start seeing the mind work and you start seeing how the mind is working, and you go, okay, the mind is working this way. This is where the awareness kicks in. And it's not going to be a stream of thoughts. When your awareness recognizes it, answers come from a different place. They don't come from your mind anymore. They come from this internal intuition. You can just feel it. And it's like, oh, I just had a revelation. But it was no thoughts. It just, boom, it hits you like that. I mean, some of you may call that NI, but whatever it is, it comes from nowhere. It's seemingly nowhere. So that's why you have to understand your personality type, because then you understand how you're attempting to duplicate these things, right? Okay, I'm attempting to duplicate a holding environment in which my parents didn't love me. Okay, I'm simulating that version of love. Or I'm simulating a holding environment in which I didn't get my bottle. So I'm going to go hug everybody to make me feel like I get what I need. So that's the concept behind it. It's pretty simple. So the more you understand personality type enough, you start have to letting it go. I hate saying that because it makes it sound like, okay, sign off my channel, unsubscribe right now, get off, go away, don't watch personality type anymore. But the idea behind it is you start letting go of personality type. And so when you start letting go of that personality type, and you start letting that go, you start seeing, okay, you're no longer attached to your personality label. It's just one little tool to show you how you're actually being an idiot. Of course, you don't want to judge yourself like that, but that's what it is. It shows you how you're being a moron, and how you're actually identifying with an aspect of you. You're trying to duplicate something that you have no power to duplicate. You can't duplicate divinity with the power of the mind. It's like a bacteria trying to build a house. It's just, help me, help. It's not going to happen. So when you get past it and you start realizing that you can't actually do that, you actually start letting go. You actually go, you know what? I actually don't have the power to control it all. Let go of all control. So you start letting it all go. And this doesn't mean you need to be a lazy piece of shit sitting on the couch eating potato chips like Trey. Okay, you actually want to move to a point where you actually allow life to work through you, and your element does its thing. A lot of people, well, that doesn't mean that means I don't do anything anymore. I just sit and let life flow, and I'm just going to be lazy. No, this damn finger isn't lazy, right? And some of you sick perverts might be thinking things right now, but the concept behind it is the same. This finger has done a lot of things in its life. If you like writing, it's been writing. It's doing a lot of things. It's helped me cook. It's helped me clean. And some of you sick freaks are already thinking or going down the wrong path right now, and I already know. But you just don't want to sit there and go, oh, guess I ain't got no control. Go ahead and sit back and let life. Now, granted, there may be a person out there that is their sole purpose is to sit there until some war breaks out and get shot as an extra in a movie, right? It's just their sole purpose is to get killed. Maybe it'll piss somebody off, or maybe like, oh, you killed my great uncle, and they'll start some revolutionary war. But the whole point is that we each have to know that purpose, but that purpose comes out of a center of awareness. And as we flow in the moment, things will happen naturally. It's no longer an effort like, oh, I got to do this, or oh, I got to do this, because you're attempting to attach again. I got to be successful, or I got to make money, or I got to go. You're forcing yourself to do something that you shouldn't be doing. Right? So that's really the core of it. So when you start studying personality, you do it for the sake of saying, how am I actually, especially Enneagram. Enneagram is a good representation of where you will identify how you're duplicating or attempting to duplicate a perfect holding environment, and you're duplicating divinity. This is where you get your passions and virtues in Enneagram. This is where you get your holy ideas, and our attempt to duplicate that, which is our fixation, right? Our Enneagram fixation, our Enneagram stance or vantage point is our attempt to duplicate that holy idea. So this is why 8s, for example, seek control. 8s seek control because in their holy idea, they see that the universe is all one. And in order to do that, I have to make everything one by owning it all or controlling it all. And then I can make it all part of me. It's an extension of myself. But with that fixation, you will never, ever, ever truly be connected to everything. You may control it and possess it to your limit, and you control it, but is it really part of you? No matter how long I hold this pen, it's never going to become a part of me. As long as I have that vantage point, right? I'm never going to have it become part of me. I may control it. I can tell it where to write and what to do. But is this pen, am I identified? Do I understand how this pen relates to me? Maybe, maybe not, right? I don't understand the attachment that's actually forming because I'm still doing it from the mind instead of allowing things to be. So I'm gonna pause for a second, go through some of if there's any questions on here. Let's see. Let's check the last thing. It says, John T says, okay, Kimberly Ruffner says, is there popcorn? The question is, popcorn is somewhere in the universe. Your job is to find it. John T says, if one does MBTI and they don't begin to do astrology, they're fools. Astrology together with MBTI brings a better, larger perspective and more deeper understanding of oneself. Well, John, you know, I could say the same thing. If one does MBTI and they do astrology, but they don't do Enneagram, I could say the same thing. You're a fool. If you don't do astrology, Enneagram, and MBTI, and Socionics, you're a fool. If you don't do Socionics, MBTI, Enneagram, astrology, and you don't do the Kabbalah, and you don't do chakras, you're a fool. The list can continue to go on forever. So the idea behind it is that I don't think they're necessarily being foolish. I think they are, you know, they're taking their time learning something, and we should be appreciative of people's journey or their point in the journey. So the other questions, let's see, let me scroll down here. I don't see any question marks. If you don't put a question mark, I'm skipping over you. All right, so Brian asked, how can the core of your being be static? Are you saying that we have no free will? No, I'm not saying that. I think that there is a very possibility of high free will, but this gets in a very metaphysical conversation, which is kind of irrelevant from the point of this video. But I will say that as far as free will goes, there is a natural flow of the universe. A rock, does a rock have free will? Or does a human, has the universe given a human a specific idea of free will, right? Maybe, maybe not. There's no way to know. Who cares, right? When you let go of the personality, who cares? You're going to do something naturally, whether it's sit on a couch or whether it's go do things in the world. When you let go of personality, something's going to flow through you. Claudia says, why I prefer to be an ENTJ? It's something that's somebody to push me to be this way. I don't know. That's a good question. Let's see. Any more questions? No questions. Doing great. I don't see. I'm not a fool. Who else is left? It's so the free will conversation. This can go really complex. It can. I'm not going to be the person to tell you that there is free will or there's not free will. Okay, there's this huge argument between different ideologies, especially in Christianity, of Calvinism versus Arminianism, right? Is there free will or is it all destiny, right? Or is there not? And is it? I don't know about all that. I don't. I think that if you really think about it, there is no other moment that exists in the present moment. There is no other thing that exists but now. So is there really time, or is time an illusion? I mean, come on, how do we know these things? We don't. All we can speculate is be here now, and maybe destiny has already been designed, maybe it hasn't, who knows? But the idea is that it's unfolding naturally in its own natural way. So everything's unfolding in this present moment. That's all there is. So if everything's unfolding as is, then maybe there's no destiny per se, but maybe you have free will in this moment, but it's unfolding as it exactly should be. If you want to go punch your neighbor in the face, then that's what you do. Then that's the course of the universe. So consider that free will or not. Just make sure he's not, you know, he doesn't have any drawbacks from being punched in the face, because there's going to be consequences from that. So, if we move on to the point here, let's see. If you're in a certain way with no free will, then why bother changing everything or anything? We're destined to do what we already destined for, just be a passenger in this trade ride. Yeah, you know, Brian, I actually think you have a point. The idea is to be a passenger in the train ride. I think a train ride, if you think about it and you really let go of who we've been designed to be like, then, you know, like, oh, my parents need me to be a respectful young gentleman, or blah, 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 blah. We go on this long train of who we think we need to be like. Then we're kind of resisting the natural flow, and we're forcing ourselves to become, right? So instead of forcing ourselves to become something, the idea is that we let go of this and allow things to work through us. Christians may say God work through you, but the idea is to let it go and let it go work through you. And you're going to do what you naturally do, depending on what mask you wear, but you never identify with that mask. It's never who you are, right? You at 5 hours a day, you may be a dad. Then when you go to work, you may be the CEO. Then when you take the work suit off, you take it off. After 7 p.m. when you go home, it's gone. You're not the CEO anymore. You're now the father. And then when your kids go to bed, you may be the husband. And then when you play the different roles, but you never identify, I am this, and I am this, and I'm this. You know who you are and you know what role you have to play, but no longer are you attached and forcing yourself to be the CEO. You're not changing your whole life around something that you've molded. So if we keep this up, let's see. We have all MBTI tests that don't take a direct exercise cognitive functions into account are flawed. I think every MBTI test is flawed to some extent. What John T says, what do you think about embracing the ego? Absolutely. I started this video off saying the ego is not something you want to get rid of. You should embrace it. You should understand what its role in your life. And then when you understand that, you can actually let it do its work, because you don't want to be without an ego. Ego is designed to protect us. So you want to let the ego do its job. You want to let the ego actually do and unfold the way it's supposed to, and focus when you need to focus. Oh, I need to focus on being, let's say that you're playing, this is going to be an under example, not a really good one, but it's an example to kind of emphasize my point. You're playing tennis. All right. You know, you're not the tennis player. Let's say that you're very self-aware. You know, you're not the tennis player, but you need to focus on the game of tennis. In that moment, you emulate and become the tennis player, but you know, ideally, that you're actually the observer and watching your body do as it's supposed to do, as you've trained to do, as you put all those hours on the court, you've been trained to do that. But then when the tennis game is over, you're not beating yourself up about losing or winning. You let it go. You did what you need to do and you moved on. It's no longer, I'm a tennis player. And then when you lose, you feel devastated because you lost. That's an ego attachment. Now you've attached to the ego. Instead, focus on the game 100%. Be in that moment, kick ass it and do the best you can. And then when you let it go, you let it go. It's no longer attached to you. Win or lose, fail or win, it doesn't matter. That's the whole point beyond this, is you embrace your ego for what it's doing. I have a person here that says, wow, there's a lot of stuff. How can we properly educate the next generation to embrace free will in their lifelong journey to attain the highest spiritual fulfillment possible? Pompous, the answer is to live now. You actually will do, and you will affect people around you by being that way yourself. You actually don't even have to teach it. The stronger you are in the moment, you actually affect others around you without even having to try to affect them around you. That's ultimately where I think it comes from. People will flock to you. They'll see something in you. They see that little twinkle in your eye. And of course you don't give a crap because you're not attached to even being a teacher. If you're setting the purpose of wanting to educate the next generation, again, you're probably forming an attachment. This is tough because there's a point where you may do this naturally because the course of the universe is propelling you to do this. And I'm not saying you shouldn't feel anything. I'm saying you shouldn't be attached to it. So as we move down, let's see. Time is a moral construct. So Lewis says, have you read Psycho Cybernetics? It talks a lot about these ideas. Yes, I have. It's a good book. Yeah, so Claudia says that but I don't really know there is or there is not. You can't create something from nothing because I can't see more than what my eyes can physically see. Okay, well, Claudia, the question is, this is something I'm really going to ask you to think about, is, are you your eyes? Are your eyes you? So if you can't see more than what your eyes are physically seeing, then how do you know your eyes are seeing at all? What are your eyes? How are you aware of your eyes? If you're aware of your eyes, then how do you even know your eyes are actually seeing? So these are questions that you need to ask, and you need to figure out if that's the case. I mean, if you feel that you are your eyes, then great. But how are you aware of your eyes? Because a book told you? Think about it. I mean, it's just something to think about. I don't have answers to this, but how are you even aware of them? Is it because someone told you, or is it because you can actually be aware of them? And if you are aware of them, then there's more you're seeing than the eyes. Because let me ask you, can the eyes see themselves? You don't see your own eyes. How do you even know they're there? You're seeing with something. So just some food for thought there. Curious about interacting with different types, just learning MBTI mostly through Damon's perspectives. Well, I appreciate that, Ganare. That's always an honor that I have the capability to help people understand this a little more. I tend to get a little meta beyond just MBTI. There's so much more to understanding oneself. So that's where I'm going with this whole thing, though, is that use MBTI, use Socionics, use Enneagram as a tool to further your own understanding of how you're doing things, and then pierce through it. pierce through it by becoming aware of what you're doing and fixing it. And fixing it is simply by becoming aware of it. It's pretty simple. You don't have to make it a lifelong mission to fix things. That desire to fix it is going to be your worst enemy. Take it from me, who's been a raving perfectionist my entire life about repairing myself through personal development. And one of my spiritual teachers in my past had always mentioned, let it all go. Stop getting into self-help. Stop getting into personal development. Just enjoy what you're doing. And I thought it was crazy. I'm like, what if I'm doing stupid crap? He goes, laugh at yourself. So that's what I mean. Is like, at some point you really come to a point where you're like, okay, is self-help really necessary? I think we all have one thing in common. All of us watching MBTI is, who am I? We ask this question, who am I? We're asking the wrong question. The real question is, where am I? That's the question we should be asking ourselves, is where am I? Because it's not what I'm presenting to you. It's certainly not what I've fabricated for myself. Where am I on the inside? Where am I in life? Why do I need this personality? What is it doing for me? How is it serving me? What am I attempting to recreate? Right. So a lot of guys I know, myself included, have an issue with being vulnerable. I've been becoming a lot better at it. It hasn't been easy, but just getting better one day at a time. And the vulnerability, the invulnerability, rather, the presentation of invulnerability comes from a place where you put up a guard or armor to protect yourself from harm because someone else wasn't there to protect you. So you force and create a place where you cannot be hurt. And as you know, you do get hurt some way, some shape, somehow. You're not happy. You're just not. You realize that you've shut it all off. So if we get to a point and where we understand this, we start moving beyond it. And then that is where we can still say, yeah, I identified with this personality type, but I don't think I'm there anymore. It doesn't mean the personality theory is wrong. Now, when you move into the cognitive psychology, you can start studying the mind, and you can actually start looking at how your mind is seeing the world with cognitive functions, such as Jungian functions or whatnot. And this is where MBTI has a different role. MBTI is less about how you're duplicating or trying to restore a holding environment, but more about how you're seeing the world. Now, some of you may be questioning, well, can your personality type change? No, it cannot. And I will always stick by that, because your personality type is an attempt to, whether it's MBTI, let's start with MBTI or Socionics, that is a way that you're perceiving information. It's not going to change. But what will change is the way that you're presenting that personality type. Not every personality type has to be what the stereotypes say they are. If you are allowing that personality type to work in its natural way, because you were given this personality, and I say given, this personality was formed for a reason. It happened as a result of circumstance or God or whatever you want to call it. And the personality has formed, it's going to serve, it's going to do its thing. Let it do its thing. Let your personality do its thing, but realize and be aware that you are not that personality. That personality is just doing its thing. So if that personality seeks power, for example, you got to figure out why it's seeking power. Okay, it's seeking to replace that power. Now let's actually give the ego and recognize the ego is just wanting, and attaching. And when you can let that go and realize that attachment is just exactly what it is, then you start seeing that, okay, I don't really need power. What am I trying to fulfill with this personality? What you may come to is that it's not power you seek anymore. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's a family. Maybe it's something else. Even then, should you be attached to those things? And these are the existential questions that a lot of us may be faced with in this journey. And there's no exact answers to all of them, but I don't believe attachment is key. I think there's a point where you let it go and let your personality do its work, but never let your success be part of you. Never let your even your failures be part of you. They're not you. So let's scan for some more questions. Pompous Dreamers 95. What truly distinguishes an SXSP from an SPSX? Also, why should philosophy be taught to elementary school level children? And does it benefit them? Probably goes over their head, to be honest with you, Pompous, as far as the philosophy goes. And as far as the Enneagram subtypes, go on Slack. That's actually like their topic. I'm not going to address that in this video. That's a real side topic. I wish I could, but that can go really off. Edgy Wedgie, interesting name. If we let everything flow through us and just accept everything that is coming our way, how are we ever supposed to find out what we were really supposed to do? What you're supposed to do is let it do its thing. You'll figure that out if you continue that journey. Let's say, whoa, too many people posting. Thoughts on law of attraction? Well, I'll get to that in another video. Why does Trey? Yeah, that's irrelevant. You know that's irrelevant though. You're just being Trey. Okay. So that should summarize why it's still necessary to go through personality. And obviously, there's a lot more on this topic. I'm going to make more thoughtful videos. This was kind of just a little ramble I wanted to get out there and kind of warm up into posting some content here and there. But more importantly, I will be segmenting. Let's say a hard fork in honor of the Bitcoin. I'll be doing a hard fork on my particular channel here. Where I will be segmenting personality and psychology on my YouTube, but there will be information on my podcast. I will be talking on the podcast specifically about topics. I got a list here. Hold on. Let's imagine a drum roll in your head as I scroll through my notes because I'm behind it. So my podcast will be more on religion, philosophy. It'll be on social dynamics between, let's say, masculine and feminine roles. It'll also be on a little bit of book reviews, covering some books that people should be reading and or not. Some politics. So it's going to be real controversial. And whereas my personality psychology stuff will remain on YouTube, I'll be doing stuff on MBTI, Socionics, Enneagram, a little bit of NLP stuff, and personality stuff. Obviously, will kind of stick on this channel. Will be released here shortly. I'm in the process of actually making those programs, and at least the first few months worth, they'll be released on a timely schedule, kind of disappearing into the midst in a way. But as we move through this, we will see these things slowly released. So as far as everything else, Enneagram topic is it seems to be the thing on Slack right now. Brian and his girlfriend seem to talk about this stuff every other day. So Brian, I'm glad you're on the same page. You're probably reading my mind as we speak. So as far as everything else goes, I'm not going to go overzealous and release videos every day or anything. I'm going to just play it by ear. I want to make sure you guys get content here and there, and I want it to be well thought out. Not always a live stream, but I wanted to start off today with a live stream because I'm still working on setting of the videos and that kind of thing. But be warned, the videos are going to be a little bit different than what I've done previously. So, all right, I'll give some time for any last questions. That way you guys have a good understanding of, any of these topics. I do see that most of this is to Trey, so we'll leave Trey to answer all these questions. He seems to be the local sage on the chat there. So other than that, guys, I appreciate your time today, and hopefully you got some content out of this. You got some points to talk about. And if you need anything else, let me know. More than happy to try to address it. So anyway, hope you guys have a good night. Take care of yourselves and have some fun. Take care.